The bridge of the Alliance flagship Star of Vorthen was silent, except for the faint hum of the engines and the soft, steady beeping of the long-range scanners. Out beyond the armored windows, space stretched endless and black, a sea of shadows, sprinkled with pale, cold stars. It should have been peaceful, but for everyone on board, it was the silence of a hunting ground, the quiet before the predator strikes. Captain Rilland stood at the center of the bridge, his tall, angular frame rigid as a steel beam. His 4 eyes, deep amber and unblinking, scanned the tactical display hovering in front of him. Crimson shapes marked the enemy fleet, the Sylph Dominion. They were coming from all sides, closing the trap. Each enemy ship was like a shard of black glass, sharp-edged and fast. Moving with the precision of a killing machine, the Alliance fleet, made up of ships from 12 different worlds, was small by comparison. Only a few dozen cruisers and escorts, plus Ryland's own flagship. They were surrounded in a stretch of empty space between 2 dying stars, a region no one had planned to fight in. There was nowhere to run. The crew spoke in low voices, their words clipped and tense. A Horavic weapons officer with feathers of deep red tapped his claws nervously against his console. The comms technician, a slender, crystalline being whose skin shimmered like frost, kept glancing toward the captain, as if waiting for an order that could save them. No such order came. At the far end of the bridge, in the shadows near the starboard viewport, stood Commander Ava Rourke, the only human aboard. She was shorter than most of the crew, her figure lean, her dark hair tied back in a practical knot. Her uniform was plain compared to the ornate armor and ceremonial robes of the other officers, but her posture was calm, her face unreadable. Ryland's eyes flicked toward her, and he spoke in his deep, deliberate voice. "You have been quiet, human." Ava didn't answer right away. She kept watching the tactical map, her gaze shifting over the enemy formation, like someone reading a story only she understood. Finally, she said, "I'm thinking." Ryland's mandibles twitched in irritation, a Vorthen gesture of frustration. "Thinking will not change the mathematics. They outnumber us 5-1. Their weapons burn through shields in a single strike. If we fight, we will be destroyed in less than an hour." Some of the crew turned their heads toward her, waiting for a reaction. Ava only tilted her head slightly, eyes still fixed on the glowing red icons, creeping closer on the display. "Maybe," she said softly, "or maybe not." Her voice was calm, but there was something in it, a note of quiet certainty that didn't belong in this hopeless situation. The comms officer's console beeped sharply. "Incoming broadcast from the Sylph," the crystalline technician said, her voice trembling like cracked glass. "Put it through," Ryland ordered. The air filled with a deep, grinding sound, like stone tearing against stone. The Sylph language was ugly and harsh, each word vibrating through the bones, but the translation came through the speakers in flat, cold, basic. "This is High Blade Varzik of the Sylph Dominion. You are surrounded, surrender now, and some of you will live." The voice carried no arrogance, no joy. It was not a threat, spoken in anger. It was the statement of a predator, telling its prey the hunt was over. A long moment passed before anyone moved. The silence was heavier now, pressing on every chest like a weight. One of the insectoid navigators spoke first. "Captain, perhaps." Silence. Ryland snapped, his amber eyes still locked on the display. But another voice broke in over the command channel. Admiral Salor, leader of the Hravek fleet detachment. His words came sharp and fast, like a hawk's cry. "Rilland, we must retreat. Scatter the fleet. Some will escape. Staying here is suicide." A dozen other commanders joined the channel, all speaking at once, crystal tones, clicks, growls, hisses, an orchestra of fear. No one talked about winning, only about surviving. Through it all, Ava stood still. She didn't look at Rilland. She didn't join the argument. Her mind seemed somewhere else entirely. Finally, Ryland spoke over the noise. Commander Rourke, do humans have an answer to this? She turned to face him for the first time since the enemy appeared. Her dark eyes met his unflinchingly. We do. And what is it? He asked. A faint smile touched her lips, though it was not one of amusement. It was the kind of smile a soldier wears before stepping into a storm. You'll see, she said. Outside the viewport, the enemy fleet grew larger. Their black hulls caught no light, drinking in the starlight like it was nothing. The two dying stars at either side of this empty space pulsed faintly, like the last weak beats of a heart. On the sensors, the Sylph ships moved with flawless unity, tightening their net around the Alliance fleet. There was no rush in their approach. Predators didn't hurry when the prey had nowhere to run. Ava walked forward, stepping into the light at the center of the bridge. Her boots clicked against the deck, steady and unhurried. She stopped beside the communications console. Voice followed her. What are you doing? Ending this, she said simply. She didn't look at the captain. Instead, she leaned toward the comm officer. Her tone was calm, almost gentle, but it was not a request. Open a wideband channel to the Sylph flagship. The crew stared at her, as if she'd lost her mind. Opening a direct channel to the enemy was an open invitation for them to gloat, or to give the order to fire. The comms officer hesitated, his crystalline hands trembling. Commander, are you certain? Yes. The officer glanced at Rylan. The captain's mandibles twitched again, but after a moment, he gave a short nod. Do it. A burst of static filled the bridge. Then the deep, grinding voice of High Blade Varzek returned. Colder and closer than before. Speak your surrender, the Sylph said. Ava's voice was steady. Not surrender. A message. The entire bridge seemed to hold its breath. Every eye, alien and human alike, was on her. And then she said it. One word. Asterisk. The word left Ava Rourke's lips like a drop of ink into still water. Quiet, but spreading instantly through the air. Yield. For a moment, no one on the bridge moved. The crew looked at each other in confusion. The Haravic weapons. Officers' feathers bristled, a reflex of disbelief. The crystalline comms officer tilted her head, unsure if she'd misheard. Even Captain Ryland's steady posture faltered, his amber eyes narrowing. On the other end of the channel, the enemy, Commander, Highblade Varzek, was silent. When his voice came back, it was slower, more deliberate. You dare command the Sylph Dominion. Ava didn't blink. Not a command, an opportunity. The only way you leave here alive. The bridge went deathly quiet. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. Her tone carried none of the desperation everyone expected from a cornered fleet. It was steady, controlled. The voice of someone who had already decided the outcome. Rylan stepped closer to her, lowering his voice so the crew couldn't hear. Commander, are you provoking them? They will fire. They already planned to, she replied. The difference is, now they're thinking about why I'm not afraid. Rylan didn't like it. Warthans were logical. Survival meant numbers, firepower, advantage. Ava had none of these things. Yet, here she was, speaking as if she were the predator, and the Sylph were the ones trapped. Varzek's voice returned, low and sharp. We have you surrounded. We have the power to destroy every ship in your fleet. We? Ava cut him off. Yes, you can. But I'm offering you a chance not to die doing it. The crew exchanged glances. Not to die. They were the ones about to be slaughtered, not the Sylph. Varzek gave a harsh, metallic laugh, the kind that scraped at the ears. You believe you can kill the Sylph? Ava's eyes flicked toward the tactical display. Small, faint blue markers, meaningless to anyone who didn't know what to look for, were scattered through the debris field around them. She looked back at the comm panel. I don't believe it, she said. I know it. On the Alliance command channel, other captains were still speaking in panicked bursts. Some demanded to know what the human was doing. Others warned her to stop before she made things worse. The tension was a living thing now, pressing against every wall, filling every breath. But Ava ignored them all. She leaned slightly closer to the mic. You think you've trapped us, but we've been here before, surrounded, outnumbered, written off. You see prey, we see an opening. Ryland's eyes darted to the display again. It still made no sense to him. The Sylph formation was perfect. There was no weakness. But he noticed Ava's gaze was fixed on the debris, the remnants of an old battle drifting in the void, chunks of dead ships turning slowly in the gravity between the two dying stars. Varzek's tone shifted. If you believe you have an advantage, human, demonstrate it. If not, I will. You'll do nothing, Ava said, her voice suddenly sharp enough to cut through the static. Because you've just realized you don't know what's about to happen next. And for the first time in your life, Highblade, you're uncertain. That word uncertain seemed to land harder than any threat. Predators like the Sylph thrived on control. Uncertainty was the beginning of fear. The Ravek weapons officer spoke quietly, almost to himself. What is she doing? The crystalline comms officer whispered back, I don't know. But the Sylph stopped moving. It was true. On the display, the enemy's advance slowed. Their formation wavered just slightly enough to be noticed by anyone watching closely. Ava straightened, her expression unreadable. Highblade Varzek, I will ask you one last time, yield. The silence that followed was. The drones moved like shadows through the void, invisible to the naked eye. To anyone who didn't know what they were, they looked like harmless pieces of wreckage, bits of metal, broken plating, twisted frames from ships long dead. But now, each fragment was alive with purpose. On the tactical display, faint ghost signals traced their paths. They were closing in on the Sylph from all directions, slipping between the jagged black warships like dust between teeth. The Alliance crew, on the bridge, watched in silence. Some stared in awe. Others glanced at Ava, as if trying to understand how a single human could have arranged something like this. Captain Ryland kept his voice low, but there was a sharp edge to it. These drones. They're armed. Yes, Ava said. Plasma. Charges with adaptive shields. They're designed to survive a first hit long enough to reach their target. Ryland's mandibles twitched. You've hidden hundreds of weapons in a battlefield no one visits. Months of work, Ava replied. Months of planning for the day the Sylph would push us here. The Sylph fleet was still moving, but slower now. The perfect diamond-shaped formation they'd held for the entire chase had begun to ripple with tiny adjustments. On the comm channel, the static hissed, as if even the silence between them carried tension. The crystalline comms officer whispered, They know something is wrong. That's the point, Ava said. Predators make mistakes when they're no longer sure who's hunting who. Varzek's voice returned, deeper than before. We will burn your drones. Your trap will fail, and then we will take your ships. One by one, Ava tilted her head slightly, almost smiling. You can try, but you'll have to hit all of them before they hit you. That's difficult when you don't know where the real weapons are. Ryland frowned. Real weapons? She nodded toward the display. Half of those drones are just empty shells. The other half will open your enemies like they're made of paper. And they can't tell which is which. The crew exchanged quick, uneasy glances. This was not a clean tactic. It was something more dangerous, a gamble designed to make the enemy hesitate just long enough for the kill. On the display, the first Sylph ship changed course, its black hole turning away from the main advance to target the nearest drone. Cluster. Streams of green plasma fire lit up the dark, tearing through several targets. But more drones slipped past, unharmed. A second Sylph ship broke formation. Then a third. The perfect unity of their movement was starting to fracture. A Haravik officer let out a sharp, bird-like laugh. They are chasing shadows. Ava didn't look away from the display. Captain, signal all Alliance ships. Tell them to prepare for a concentrated fire on my mark. They only get one chance. Rylan hesitated. And if your timing is wrong, then we die here, Ava said, without a trace of fear. But if my timing is right, we end this. Outside, the debris field was alive now. The drones weaved and darted, each following a programmed path that seemed random, but was anything but. Their true destinations were the Sylph's reactor vents, points too small to target in normal battle, but vulnerable to a close-range strike. The Sylph fired relentlessly, cutting down drones by the dozens, but each time they destroyed one, another slipped closer, hugging the shadows of dead ships or the glare of distant starlight. Varzek's voice came again, sharp with command. Pull back to secondary formation. Screen the cores. Do not let the swarm close. Rylan's eyes widened, slightly. They're retreating inside the trap. That's right, Ava said quietly. Now we close it. She stepped forward, her voice firm and steady. Mark. In that single moment, the entire Alliance fleet moved. Dozens of ships pivoted in perfect sync, every cannon turning toward the center of the Sylph formation. The drones, all the real ones, accelerated at once. The false drones continued their aimless drift, pulling fire and splitting the enemy's attention. The first real impact came seconds later. A drone slammed into the starboard flank of a Sylph destroyer, its plasma charge burrowing deep before detonating in a sphere of white-blue fire. The blast tore a glowing wound in the ship's black armor. Target the breaches, Ava ordered. Alliance ships unleashed their guns. Plasma bolts and kinetic slugs slammed into the open wound, and the destroyer shuddered before breaking apart. Pieces spinning into the void. A roar filled the bridge, not of fear, but of sudden hope. Even the most cautious crew members felt the shift in the air. For the first time, they weren't just surviving, they were winning. But Ava didn't relax. Her eyes stayed locked on the display. Don't celebrate yet. They're going to fight harder now. And she was right. The remaining Sylph ships moved like a cornered beast, lashing out in all directions. 2 Alliance cruisers were ripped apart in the first counterattack, their wreckage vanishing into the debris cloud. The victory had come at a price. Still, the drones kept closing in. Every time one broke through and struck a Sylph hull, the Alliance pounced on the opening. Slowly, piece by piece, the once perfect enemy formation was collapsing. Varzek's voice was no longer calm. Human, what are you? Ava's reply was quiet, but every soul on the bridge heard it. The reason you should have stayed in your own hunting grounds. Then came the biggest explosion yet. 3 drones hit the same battleship in quick succession, their charges detonating almost at the same time. The ship split along its spine, the blast lighting up the debris field like a sunrise in the dark. The shock wave rolled across the battlefield, scattering smaller wrecks and forcing nearby Sylph ships to veer off course. That single moment of chaos was enough for Ava to see it, the gap she had been waiting for. Captain, she said sharply, that's our opening. Rylan's mandibles clicked once in understanding. All ships follow the humans' lead. They turned toward the breach in the enemy line, engines burning bright against the black. The fleet that had been prey an hour ago was now moving like hunters, every ship aiming straight for the enemy's heart. The Alliance fleet surged forward, engines blazing, cutting through the breach in the Sylph line like a spear through flesh. The view from the bridge of the Star of Vorthen was chaos, flashes of plasma fire, glowing debris spinning past, the black jagged silhouettes of enemy ships twisting in the void. Ava stood at the center of it all, her eyes locked on the tactical display. Each red icon on the map was an enemy still standing. Each blue icon was an ally still alive. And with every second, those numbers were changing. Captain Rylan gripped the edge of his console, his voice steady but tense. If we push Too far. We'll be cut off. We won't, Ava said, without looking up. Not if we keep the pressure on. Around them, the crew worked in silence. No panic now, just focus. The Revec weapons officer tracked targets with quick, precise sweeps of his claws. The crystalline comms officer relayed orders to the rest of the fleet, her voice calm and cold. They had all seen what the humans could do, and it had given them something they hadn't had since the enemy appeared. Belief. The first enemy they met inside the breach was a Sylph frigate, its hull glistening like oil under a faint light. It swung to block their path, its forward cannons glowing with a sickly green charge. Evasive pattern Delta, Rylan barked. The Star of Vorthen rolled sharply, enemy fire flashing past its flank. Alliance cruisers on either side opened up, with a barrage, hammering the frigate's shields until they cracked. Now, Ava called Dot to human corvettes darted in from above, their plasma lances punching through the fractured shields. The frigate's core went critical in seconds, and the explosion lit the breach like a flare. The debris cleared just enough to show the next target, a Sylph battleship twice the size of the Vorthen. Rylan glanced at Ava. Suggestions. Don't hit the front, she said instantly. It's an armor trap. Hit the vents on the port side. How do you? I studied their wreckage after Hollow's Rift, she said quickly. Trust me. He did. The fleet shifted, weaving between wrecks until they had a clear shot. The Revec officer's talons tapped out firing coordinates, and the battleship's side lit up with a sudden, violent bloom of blue-white fire. The massive ship began to list, its engines sputtering. Ava didn't hesitate. Take it down before they recover. 3 human destroyers dove in, their railguns pounding the crippled vessel until it tore apart in a silent, fiery ripple. But the victory came at a cost. 2 Alliance ships, a Draenari cruiser and a small insectoid scout vessel, were caught by enemy counterfire. Both disappeared in bursts of orange light, their icons winking out on the display. A shadow passed over Ava's expression, but she didn't stop. We keep going, she said firmly. If we slow down, they close the gap. The Sylph fought like beasts, cornered in their own den. Their black holes darted through the battlefield with frightening speed, their green plasma weapons tearing at shields. But they were no longer in control. Every time they tried to regroup, a swarm of drones cut them apart. Every time they tried to push forward, human ships hit them from an unexpected angle. The difference was clear now. The Sylph were reacting, not dictating. Varzek's voice came over the come again, but it was no longer smooth and cold. You will not escape. You are prey. All of you are prey. Ava's reply was razor sharp. Then you're hunting the wrong galaxy. Inside the breach, the space was narrow, filled with drifting wreckage. It forced the Sylph ships to funnel toward the center, where the Alliance concentrated their fire. The tactical display showed it like a narrowing throat, the enemy being drawn in, and the battlefield was a graveyard now. Shattered hulls drifted in the silent dark, their twisted metal catching the cold light of the twin dying stars. Trails of debris floated between the wrecks like smoke in water. The stars themselves pulsed, faintly, casting a strange reddish glow over everything, like the universe itself was watching. The Sylph were running. Ava saw it on the tactical display. The red icons were pulling back, their paths scattering into the deeper void. Not a tactical withdrawal, not a regroup. They were fleeing. Rylan stared at the display as if it were lying to him. They don't retreat, ever. They do now, Ava said softly. The Star of Vorthen pushed forward, leading the fleet. The comms channels were alive with voices, cheers from human crews, cautious disbelief from the other species. They're breaking apart, someone shouted. They fear us. Another voice said, half in shock, half in triumph. But not everyone was celebrating. The Draenari science officer on the bridge leaned closer to her console. Something is strange. Their drives are not set for their home space. Ava's attention snapped to her. Where, then? The Draenari hesitated. Away from us. Not just the Alliance, away from the humans specifically. The thought settled over the bridge like frost. Ava's fingers tightened on the edge of her chair. It wasn't simple fear. This was targeted avoidance. They've never behaved like this, Rillan said. When the Sylph retreat, it is to plan another strike. But now, they want distance. Ava finished for him. Not time. Distance from us. Orders went out to pursue. Human corvettes darted ahead, hunting stragglers, while the heavier Alliance ships closed ranks. Every encounter ended the same way. Sylph ships would fight if trapped, but if they saw a human vessel, they broke and ran faster. One human captain's voice came over the comms, breathless. We caught a destroyer near the fringe of the belt. They ignored our allied ships and fired only at us. They burned their own engines out to keep us from boarding, like we were poison. Poison, the word stayed in Ava's mind, as the chase moved away from the twin stars. The glow faded, and the darkness of deep space took over. The Alliance was cautious now, wary of traps. The Sylph weren't known for retreat without reason. The Vorthan scanners caught movement ahead. A formation of 6 Sylph cruisers, limping from battle damage. Rillan prepared to intercept, but the moment they detected a human ship on approach, they scattered in 6 different directions. Split and chase, Rillan asked. No, Ava said. That's exactly what they want, for us to stretch thin. She stared at the fleeing ships, the red dots blinking on the display. No predator gives up ground unless the ground itself is deadly. They know something, or they think we are that something. For hours, the pursuit continued. Damaged Sylph ships self-destructed rather than risk capture. Others dropped decoys and vanished into asteroid shadows. The farther they went, the stranger their behavior became. Erratic flight paths. Systems shut down mid-flight, even abandoning smaller ships entirely. They're acting like prey that's seen a predator it doesn't understand, Riley said quietly. Exactly, Ava replied. And predators don't run from prey unless the prey changes the rules. They intercepted a Sylph frigate near the edge of the Persine Rift. Its hull was scarred and leaking gas, but its weapons still charged as the Vorthon approached. The frigate ignored the 2 Alliance cruisers alongside it and fired everything it had at the human flagship. Shields flared, absorbing the first barrage. Ava didn't order a counterstrike immediately. Instead, she hailed them. Varzek is gone, she said into the comm. Your flagship is dust. Surrender, and you live. Static. Then a voice, not Varzek's, but a younger, rasping Sylph. Commander, we do not fear the Alliance. There was a pause, then his voice hardened. We fear you. The bridge fell silent. Why? Ava asked. You are not bound. You break patterns. You change. That is death, to us. Before she could reply, the frigate's core overloaded. It went up in a blinding flash, taking its crew with it. No one spoke for a moment. The echo of those words seemed to fill the bridge. Not bound. Break patterns. Change. Ryland's mandibles clicked once in thought. They study all who enter the stars. They predict behaviors. They win by knowing the enemy's limits. But humans don't stay within limits, Ava finished. The fleet began to slow. The deeper they chased, the more obvious it became. The Sylph were scattering into the uncharted black, burning their own numbers just to avoid crossing human paths again. This wasn't surrender. This was a decision. They'll regroup, the Hervek weapons officer said bitterly. Not against us, Ava said. Not soon. As the Alliance ships regrouped near the edge of the rift, the comms lit up with mixed voices, gratitude, disbelief, quiet awe. A message came from the Draenari High Command. The humans have done what none in the Alliance believed possible. The Sylph have fled. They have feared nothing, until now. Ava stood at the viewport, watching the last flashes of fleeing enemy drives fade into darkness. She didn't smile. Victory wasn't joy, not yet. Victory was survival, and survival meant preparing for the next time, but deep inside, she knew something had shifted forever. Far away, in the silent dark, the remnants of the Sylph fleet sent word through their hidden channels. The message was short. One word: human, asterisk. The council chamber of the Galactic Alliance was vast, a hollow sphere of silver and glass, suspended above the clouds of the core world. Vera, from Ava's seat at the circular table, she could see the planet's storms swirling below like white whirlpools. Every member species was here. The tall, crystalline drainary shimmered faintly under the chamber lights. The insectoid Ravek clicked their mandibles in hushed conversation. The scaled Thurl shifted restlessly in their water tanks. The air was tense, like everyone was waiting for someone else to speak first. Ava had been in the chamber before, but never like this. This time, every eye, every shape, compound lens, or glowing iris was fixed on her, the High Speaker of the Alliance. A being of rippling silver skin, known as Oriental, rose from the central podium. "The Sylph have withdrawn," he said, his voice amplified so it resonated through the chamber. "For the first time in recorded history, they have abandoned the battle without achieving their goal." He turned his gaze to Ava. "We know why. They feared the humans." A murmur rippled around the chamber. Some voices were curious, some doubtful, but others carried something else. Not admiration, not yet. Something sharper. A Draenary elder's voice rang out from across the table. "We should not celebrate too soon. Fear of humanity is unpredictable. It may isolate them from us." Another voice, harsh-clipped, came from a Thurl general. "Or worse. Fear turns to hate quickly." Ava straightened. "With respect, General, the Sylph's fear saved your fleets. If they had pressed the attack, they did not." The general interrupted. "That is true. But why? Why fear you, when they have crushed so many others? What is it you hide, human?" The word hide echoed in the chamber. Ava could almost feel the temperature shift. Rylan, sitting beside her as the Alliance's Hervac liaison, leaned forward. "You speak as if unpredictability is a weapon. It is not. It is a state of being. Humans adapt because they must. It is not a calculated deception." "That adaptability," said Oriental slowly, "is precisely what unsettles the Sylph. They thrive on prediction. You humans break their patterns." Ava's mind flashed back to the Sylph commander's last words before destroying his ship. "You change. That is death to us." She met Oriental's gaze. "If that's true, then you already know the truth. Our unpredictability is not a weakness. It's the one thing that makes us dangerous to enemies who believe they know how every mind in the galaxy works." The chamber went quiet, but the quiet wasn't unity. It was the kind that comes before a fracture. From the upper tiers, a voice Ava didn't recognize spoke. "And what if one day, it is us who cannot predict the humans? What if that unpredictability turns on the Alliance?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Ava didn't answer immediately. She let her gaze sweep the chamber. "You think we might turn on you? I understand that fear. We have been underestimated before. We have been mistrusted before. But I'll tell you this. Humans do not seek domination. We seek survival. And survival means protecting the allies who stand with us." A crystalline Draenary leader spoke next, her voice softer. "Survival, yes, but survival for humans is active. You push forward when others would stand still. That momentum can feel like aggression." Ryland's mandibles clicked once. Perhaps the Alliance must learn from them instead of fearing them. The word learn seemed to ripple through the crowd. Oriental raised his hand for silence. "We cannot deny the truth. Without the humans, the Sylph would have crushed the Alliance fleets. Their presence on the battlefield has changed the balance of this war. But He paused, his silver skin shifting to a darker shade. Change is not without risk. We must decide how much humanity we allow into our strategies, and into our trust. The rest of the session blurred into debate. Voices rose and fell, some calling for deeper cooperation with humans, others warning of long-term danger. Ava sat through it all, answering when she needed to, holding back when she felt the words would fall on closed ears. By the time the council adjourned, the decision was clear. Humans would remain part of the Alliance war effort, but under stricter oversight. Every fleet assignment would require dual command, with a non-human officer. Weeks passed in uneasy quiet. The Alliance fleets patrolled the outer sectors, every ship on edge. Humans were at the center of every strategy meeting. Their adaptability now, both a shield and a source of suspicion. Ava Rourke stood on the bridge of the Star of Vorthen, watching the blackness of space stretch endlessly before them. Her crew moved with quiet precision, but even they sensed something shifting. It wasn't just the calm after battle. It was the anticipation of a storm. They couldn't see. Rylan approached her quietly. Reports from the scouts are unusual. What is it? Ava asked. Sylph patrols. They're no longer scattered. They're silent. Almost like they're waiting. No transmissions, no signals. Just movement. Ava narrowed her eyes. At the display, the red icons blinked faintly, hiding among asteroid fields and nebulae. They're organizing, she said. Not for attack, for observation. Ryland's mandibles clicked nervously. That doesn't sound like the Sylph. We know. They always attack first. Not this time, Ava whispered. They're learning, watching, waiting to see what humans will do next. Across the fleet, human crews carried out drills as if the enemy could strike at any moment. But unlike the alien officers, they didn't panic. They had been cornered, underestimated, and left for dead before, and survived. That knowledge had become a quiet confidence. Ava's tactical officer, Lieutenant Merrick, tapped on the console. All sectors report silence, Commander, but the movement is synchronized, more precise than anything we've seen from the Sylph. Then they've adapted, Ava said, and now we adapt faster. The silence of space pressed down on the fleet. Every blip on the scanners, every shadow in the void, felt like a threat. The Alliance ships were ready, but tension ran. Ava walked through the corridors of the flagship, observing her crew. Some were exhausted, eyes heavy from constant vigilance. Others moved with a nervous energy, checking weapons, recalibrating shields, rehearsing battle maneuvers. Humans thrived in chaos, she thought, but even chaos could tire the body and mind. She stopped by the observation deck, staring out at the glittering stars. Somewhere out there, the Sylph waited, watching, predicting, testing, and yet, they did not understand humans. That was their mistake. Back on the bridge, Rylan joined her. Do you think they'll attack? Ava shook her head slowly. Not yet. They're afraid of us. Not just the humans in the fleet, all of us, but especially humans. They've learned that nothing about us is predictable, and that terrifies them more than our weapons ever could. Ryland's amber eyes reflected the distant stars. So they wait. For what? Ava's lips tightened. For a weakness, something to exploit, and they'll keep looking until they find it. Days turned into nights, without the usual chatter from the Sylph. Then came the first anomaly. A single, derelict ship appeared on the outskirts of the Persine Rift. Its hull was ancient, barely holding together, but it carried the unmistakable markings of Sylph design. No crew, no signals. Just a ghost floating toward the human fleet. Merrick frowned. It's a trap, isn't it? Ava's jaw clenched. We don't know, but it's deliberate. They want us to react, to make a choice. The fleet held its position. Human corvettes approached cautiously, scanning the ghost ship. Every sensor reading showed no life signs, no weapons. Nothing but empty corridors and cold metal. Still, the crew felt the tension. The Sylph were never subtle. If this ship drifted here, it was meant to test, to provoke, to observe, to create doubt. Ava stepped forward. Sometimes the enemy tests the hunter to see how it hunts. We don't flinch. We don't panic. We learn. Hours passed as they studied the derelict. Then it happened. A tiny, almost imperceptible drone detached from the ship, weaving through the void toward the fleet. Sensors barely caught its movement. The crew tensed, hands hovering over weapons controls. It's too small to matter, Merrick said. Ava shook her head. No, its purpose isn't destruction. It's observation. Every move it makes, every pattern it records, is information. The Sylph are mapping us, learning us, predicting us. Ryland's gaze hardened. Then we give them something they can't predict. Ava's eyes lit with determination. Exactly. She tapped the comm panel. Prepare all ships. This is a test, but we will be the ones who control the outcome. The fleet moved as one, a ballet of engines and shields, turning unpredictably, splitting into smaller groups, converging, diverging, leaving the Sylph drone chasing shadows instead of data. The human crews smiled quietly at each other. They were no longer just reacting. They were leading. Every unpredictable turn, every sudden maneuver, frustrated the silent watcher. The derelict drone retreated to the ship. The Sylph were patient, but humans were patient too, patient in ways the enemy could not calculate. Every decoy, every false retreat, every sudden strike became a lesson. Humans could not be predicted, cornered, or feared into submission, and the Sylph were learning it too late. Ava stood at the observation deck, watching the dark void. She didn't smile, but inside, a quiet certainty grew. Humans had survived worse, adapted faster, and learned to turn fear into opportunity. Ryland joined her quietly. Do you think they'll ever attack us directly again? She shook her head, not without thinking twice. Humans are different, and now they know it. The silence of space seemed less oppressive. For the first time, it felt like it belonged to them, a domain where humans could move freely, unpredictably, without fear, and somewhere in the dark, the Sylph would remember that **. The silence of the void shattered without warning. Sensors flared red across the Alliance fleet. The Sylph had struck, not with a full fleet this time, but with precision. A network of black ships, sleek and silent, emerged from the hidden corridors of the Persine Rift. Their formation was perfect, a deadly lattice designed to slice the Alliance apart before they could react. Ava Rourke's eyes widened at the display. They've learned. They've waited until they could strike where we're weakest. Captain Ryland's claws drummed nervously against the console. This is unlike anything we've seen. They're attacking not to win a battle, but to isolate humans. The fleet's alarms screamed. Plasma arcs illuminated the darkness as the first Sylph ships opened fire on the human-led vanguard. Smaller cruisers and corvettes swerved to intercept, but the enemy moved like shadows, slipping between attacks and striking with surgical precision. Ava didn't panic. Focus. Predict their moves, but don't let them predict ours. Humans lead the pattern. Humans break it. Lieutenant Merrick, the human tactical officer, analyzed the swarm. They're using disruption tactics. They expect fear to make us predictable. But, wait. Their targeting systems are only focusing on ships with human command signatures. Ava's jaw tightened. Then, it's clear. They're trying to cut us out entirely. If they remove humans, the rest of the fleet might crumble. Mandibles twitched. So it's just us. Alone. She nodded. Then we act like it. The fleet split, on Ava's command. Human ships took the lead, weaving unpredictably through the enemy formation. Alien ships held back slightly, firing in support but keeping distance. The Sylph, confident in their strategy, had not anticipated that humans would take the initiative so boldly. Make them chase shadows, Ava said. All of them. Every single one. The first maneuver worked. The human corvettes darted forward, and then veered sharply, leading several Sylph destroyers into a narrow corridor between asteroid fields. There, the Star of Vorthen's hidden. Drones waited, emerging from their cloaking shadows to strike at the enemy's weak points. Explosions tore through the black holes. The Sylph faltered, but they were fast learners, adjusting almost immediately. Varzek's voice, distorted but furious, echoed across the comms. Humans, you will die for this insolence. Ava didn't reply. She didn't need to. The battlefield spoke louder than words. The enemy's trap tightened. Several human-led ships were boxed in by advanced Sylph destroyers. Plasma fire lit the void, cutting lines of fire between ships. An Alliance cruiser went up in flames, torn apart before it could escape. Ava's heart pounded, but her hands moved with steady precision. Deploy all drones on synchronized vectors. Focus on the gaps in their lattice. Timing is everything. Across the fleet, humans executed flawlessly. Every ship moved with one purpose, anticipating each other's maneuvers, striking not at where the enemy expected but at where they had left themselves exposed. In the midst of the chaos, Ava saw a massive Sylph command ship advancing, clearly aiming for the human flagship. Its weapons glowed green, enough to incinerate smaller ships instantly. Rilin, Ava said, voice calm but commanding, all forward human ships. Draw it, toward the rift. Every other fleet supports. Hold back for now. We'll bait the Predator. He hesitated. And if it works, it will, Ava said. Or we'll die trying. But they'll never predict what comes next. The human fleet moved as one. The Sylph command ship followed, lured into the narrow channels of the Persine rift. Its massive size made it slower, more cumbersome, while smaller drones and human corvettes darted around its hull, confusing targeting systems and jamming sensors. The rift's hazards, jagged asteroids, energy anomalies, and volatile gas pockets became a deadly maze. The humans navigated like dancers, unpredictable and agile. The enemy, though powerful, struggled to adapt. Now, Ava breathed, gripping the console. Hidden drones detached from every ship at once. They swarmed the Sylph command ship, embedding themselves into weak points no conventional. The fleet drifted in the aftermath of the battle, battered but alive. Silence stretched across the void, broken only by the hum of engines and the soft chatter of crews. Checking systems. Ava Rourke stood on the observation deck of the Star of Vorthen, staring into the blackness beyond the fleet. Red blips from scattered Sylph ships still lingered on the tactical display, tiny dots retreating into unknown space. They were gone. For now. But she knew better than to think the threat was gone forever. The Sylph would return. Always, Captain Ryland joined her quietly. They're hiding, watching, planning. They're afraid, Ava said. Her voice was calm, but beneath it ran steel. Not just afraid of battle, afraid of us, humans. Ryland's amber eyes studied her. You think that's enough? I know it is, she replied. Because we don't fight like they expect. We don't act like anyone else. And that's what they can't handle. The council had already convened after the battle. Alien leaders debated in heated voices. Some praised the humans for their courage and skill. Others whispered fears about their unpredictability. Humans had saved the fleet, but now, in the hearts of some, they were a wild card. Ava listened as the arguments swirled. Some wanted to limit human influence in future operations. Others argued that humans should lead more missions. She realized something then. This wasn't just a victory in battle. It was a shift in power, subtle and unstoppable. Back on the bridge, Lieutenant Merrick reported. Sensors are picking up Sylph communications. They're spreading warnings, not orders. Warnings. What kind? Ava asked. About us, humans. One word keeps appearing in every channel. Human. They're terrified of us, and they're telling the rest of the galaxy to fear us too. Ava allowed herself a small smile. Exactly. Fear works both ways, and we're going to use it wisely. The fleet moved cautiously, ensuring no Sylph stragglers remained. The Alliance had been shaken, but humanity's decisive maneuvers had prevented total annihilation. Ships were repaired, crews rested, and plans were made to return to core worlds. But for Ava and her human officers, there was more to consider. The Sylph weren't just defeated. They had been taught a lesson, one humans didn't even intend to teach consciously. She walked through the corridors, observing her crew. Each human carried a quiet pride, but also fatigue and grief for those lost. Ava stopped at the memorial wall on the Vorthen, where names of fallen crew members glowed faintly. Every life mattered, she whispered. Every choice we made saved others. Rylan appeared beside her. You carry the weight of every one of them. Ava shook her head slightly. No, the fleet carries it together. Humans, we just happen to be the ones who act first. Later, in a secure comm session with the Council, Ava addressed the leaders directly. The Sylph will return, eventually, she said, but they will never face us the same way again. They fear the unpredictable, the unbound, the resilient. They fear humanity, and they should. Not because we are stronger than others, but because we are willing to do what others cannot. We adapt, we endure. We act when the impossible seems certain. The room fell silent. Every leader understood the truth. Humanity had not only survived the impossible, they had rewritten the rules of engagement for the galaxy. As the star of Vorthen prepared to depart for the core worlds, Ava watched the void stretch before them. Stars glittered like distant fires, silent witnesses to the bravery, the fear, and the triumph that had just unfolded. Ryland's voice broke her reverie. Do you ever wonder if the galaxy will ever truly accept humans? Ava turned to him, eyes steady. Acceptance isn't what matters. Respect does, and fear, when earned, is a form of respect. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the Persine rift behind. Behind them, Sylph transmissions buzzed in confusion and terror. They could not predict humanity, could not corner them, could not contain them. Ava knew this was only the beginning. Wars would come, enemies would rise. But humans had shown the galaxy something no technology or weapon could replicate: courage, ingenuity, and a refusal to be bound by expectation. In the quiet after the jump, she spoke softly to herself, more a thought than a command. We do not follow rules. We do not stay predictable. We do not wait for permission to survive, or to protect those who stand with us. Ryland stood beside her, silent, understanding the weight of her words. Somewhere in the dark void, the Sylph recorded the humans' every move. They transmitted a single word across their fleet, a word that would be repeated in whispers, warnings, and fear for centuries to come. One word, human, and in that word, the galaxy understood everything it needed to know, that humanity was unbound, unstoppable, and unforgettable. Ava looked out at the endless stars, the engines humming beneath her feet, and she whispered to herself, a vow and a promise. We are human,